Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement 2. I wanted to do a little update on this, the 5-core radio, which I think I showed a couple videos ago. So this is the radio from India, and if you haven't watched the video on this already, I recommend you do so. I'll put a link in the description, and there are plenty of other videos on YouTube now of this radio. In my last video, I had a couple issues with it. One of them was that when you're listening to AM radio and there's music, the bass in that music, when you're tuned in correctly, distorts quite badly. You don't really hear it when there's talking, but anytime there's music, it does that. And that doesn't seem like that should be happening. Now you might remember, I did install a lithium ion battery in here. And of course, this thing runs up to 4.2 volts when it's fully charged. And some people had the idea that perhaps it was overvolting and that's where the distortion was coming from. So what I did just to test, I put a diode in line with the output of this little board here. So this is the charger board, also has protection on it for the cell to prevent it from being discharged too much. I put a diode from the positive output on here to the positive on the radio, which dropped around 0.6 volts. And this battery's not fully charged. So that was putting out about 3.3, 3.4 volts. Which is completely normal for what you would get with alkaline batteries. Fully charged alkalines are about 1.7-ish each typically, and this would take 2. It didn't make the slightest difference at all, no difference whatsoever. In fact, I have since looked up the data sheet for the main IC in here. It's a Sony chip, and this chip has no problem running up to 8.5 volts. In fact, I think from a maximum voltage perspective, it could take even more. But Sony, it's a Sony chip, their range of voltage that it can work at was like 2 to 8 or 2 to 8.5 or something like that. So clearly, a part like this, running at 4.2, a battery like this is not going to cause a problem. So I've since taken that diode out because that voltage drop on the diode when you're drawing current through it, like running the radio with the volume up, will generate heat and waste energy. So it will shorten the battery life. I don't know how much, but it will shorten the battery life to some extent. So that is gone. And the other little mod I did is right here. This was the battery terminal for the negative. And you'll notice I have a piece of white electrical tape on there. And that is because without the batteries installed, I noticed on FM radio, if I was playing music, especially on FM because it sounds better, the spring right there would cause a resonance. So it would vibrate from the speaker, obviously, and that would resonate, and it would make this really annoying resonance sound. And at first I thought it was the radio, so I was like pushing on it, and it would only happen when you turn the volume up, of course. And with certain kinds of music, it was much, much worse, but it was very pronounced. It was probably like 2,000 or 3,000 hertz. It just sounded horrible. So I stuck some tape on there, but under the tape is also a zip tie, so the spring is slightly compressed. And now, if I push on it like this, not block the camera, it doesn't make any sound any longer. I mean, I still feel a little bit of resonance going on there, but playing music is totally fine. That fixed that problem entirely. So what I wanted to do is, now that I have the data sheet, Sony has an actual demo schematic. And I have a feeling that the radio design is pretty much identical to this. And I think, I was like looking through this, just trying to figure out where the issue is. It's funny, actually, let me zoom in on this. So I identified an issue here with the schematic. It has the battery right here. So there's the minus and there's the plus. And it goes through a power switch. And the way they have it wired up, it's literally going through an LED to this meter output. And the meter output is essentially to either drive a meter directly or something like an LED, where it turns it on when you are tuned into that radio station properly. And it works on AM and FM, and it can directly drive a meter. So like imagine a little analog VU meter, and as you tune in, it will show you're more strongly tuned in. Well, it can turn on LED. They have the battery plus voltage going through a switch and running to the LED, and that's it. It doesn't go anywhere else. So pin 27 here is VCC, and they have a bypass cap going to the ground input on the chip. And VCC just goes to ground with a 47 microfarad cap and no connection to the battery. So the reality is this line here should have a dot right there because that's the battery voltage going into VCC. And yes, I looked through like the pinout description in the datasheet. You can go check it out. I'll put a link in the description. That is absolutely where the voltage goes in. It doesn't like go through the LED somehow and into this meter input. No, VCC, that's the main input. And the schematic just has an error on it. I mean, if I'm reading this wrong, please point out my mistake. But that really seems like there's a problem with this. And the funny thing is, there's a couple different examples because this is the BS chip. BS, like it's BS. Basically, it's the the through-hole version of this IC. There's a surface mount version, which has a slightly different pinout. Same functionality, but the arrangement of the pins is just slightly different. And I don't remember what the two letters are, but it's different. But it has a different example, of course, for that one. It's also missing the dot there. And there's a third example diagram that is for like testing the chip, and it's also missing the dot. So not sure what's going on there with Sony and why they kind of messed it up that way, but whatever. I'm assuming the rest of this is right. This chip, I wish I printed out the block diagram. I didn't. It does everything in the chip. There's the amplification for the speaker through all the oscillator controls, which is up here. This is the tuning, where you have like the tuning capacitor. That's what this is. All that's handled internal to the chip, the detector, all that stuff. Even the amplification, the power amps section of this, where they have a headphone jack hooked up to it, but it's this AF out, even that has volume that is controlled through the potentiometer. And it's actually the potentiometer volume control. Like, it's not like the actual signal level, like the audio is going through the volume knob. I don't think. It's right up here. It's, no, that's that it here? Yeah, yes, here, vol. It is the volume. It's basically just taking voltage, if I recall. Let me see how this is working, actually. This is hooked up to this side. Oh, regulated output. Okay, that's right. So out of the chip, there's a regulated output. I don't know, it's like 1.5 volts or something like that. That's consistent no matter what the battery voltage is. That comes out here, is on one side of this potentiometer, and the other side just goes down to ground. And the volume is basically just a voltage input. And that controls the actual power amp in here, which is the AF out for this signal volume. So you're not passing like the audio signal itself through the potentiometer. It's literally just like a voltage, and that's it. But anyways, long story short, this chip, it does everything. So the distortion that we're hearing, it's kind of weird because it doesn't just happen when the volume knob is turned up loud. It happens even at really quiet volume. If there's any music with bass on the AM radio, it's very distorted. And that seems like, to me, a problem with the gain. Now, it doesn't happen on FM. FM always sounds good. Like, no matter how loud you turn it up, the music's clear and the bass doesn't distort, anything like that. But the AM is distorting. When you have AM signals that are close to your house, that are very powerful stations, like I have some 50,000 watt AM stations here in Portland, when you're listening to those, the AM signal is really strong, and it's going to be much louder than the weaker AM signals. I mean, that's just due to the nature of amplitude modulation. And this is compared to frequency modulation, FM. Even when the FM signal is stronger, like the waveform, if you're looking at the carrier coming in, is bigger, that doesn't make the volume louder. And that's because it's frequency modulated. That's what's creating the sound waves coming out of the speaker. And those don't change depending on how big or small the incoming signal is. But with AM, of course, yes, it does change. And I'm thinking that with the strong signals, maybe that's the problem. And that might have something to do with this right here, AGC, automatic gain control. Now there's AFC, automatic frequency control, and AGC, gain control. AFC is for helping you like lock into the signal. So it sort of, the chip will, as you get close and tuned into a radio station, it will kind of stay locked in. So the knob sensitivity is not so great. I'm pretty sure that's what that means. But the gain control is so the chip, the front end of the chip, can help lower the gain of really strong signals so that it doesn't overload the front end that's inside this chip and cause that distortion. Now, in the old days, you had a bunch of transistors and stuff, and those were all various stages and like functionality happening on the schematic. This chip, everything is inside it. So with the two AGC inputs, it's got two capacitors, a 10 microfarad and a 4.7. That's on this schematic. And this one here, it runs off, over here to the voltage. Oh, you know what? I put this dot in the wrong place. Damn it. People are probably screaming at their screen. So this blue circle I added for the VCC input, it should have been on the line right below here, the one with the LED on it. This AGC input that's going through the 10 microfarad comes over here and it goes up over here to the AFC input and the FM oscillator input. So that obviously has something to do with the AFC on, I think, the FM. I'm not sure AFC even works on AM. I think it's an FM thing only. But anyhow, what I wanted to do is take this radio apart and figure out what the capacitor values they were using on this circuit, especially these two right here labeled C13 and C14, to see if they match what's going on here. I can also potentially add a bigger cap to the VCC input. No, that's AF. Here we go. It's 470 on this diagram. Now, of course, I'm using a lithium ion battery now. That thing can push out quite a lot of current. So maybe having such a big cap is not as important with the lithium ion versus, say, a AA, because those might have a higher internal resistance. Although, you know, again, Dave Jones probably knows way more about that than I do. So I'm not sure that that one necessarily matters. But I can take a look in there and, you know, maybe increase the size of that one as well. There is a ripple filter here as well. And I remember reading about it in the datasheet. And I can't quite remember what it does, but it's also 10 microfarad. The AF out, this is that's the amplified signal to the speaker. It has a 220 microfarad cap on it, which, if I am correct, isn't that acting a little bit like a crossover, right? Now, what is it? Like there are coils and capacitors. And I think the caps filter out bass. And I think the coils, they filter out the high end. So if you had a subwoofer and you had a large driver and you only wanted low sounds to go to it, you would put a coil on there, like an inductor, versus a capacitor. So I suppose, I mean, but see, I don't think it's distorting, like I said, because of the audio output. And that's because even at really low volumes, like I turn the volume way down, put my ear right up to the speaker, it's still distorting. So I'm not sure. I don't think it has anything to do with the speaker output. I'm thinking it's got to be the AGC stuff here. I'm going to stick this mouse pad here. Don't want to scratch up the really nice radio, right? Oh, I did stick a piece of foam in there under the battery. So when this is all on here and I put a zip tie, it just holds it all together. All right, screwdriver time. I have not opened this up, and that screw doesn't seem to do anything. That must have to do with the antenna. Okay, I should have thought that was the case. One screw is there. Yes, it does have that sort of warranty void sticker on the side. It's not actually a warranty void sticker. It's this shiny sticker right here. So I will have to cut through that. Actually, before I do anything, I'm taking the battery out. Just in case, a short circuit risk, right? Lots of energy is stored inside an 18650. I just don't need to be shorting it out onto something accidentally. Even though hopefully this little circuit should do the protection that I need, but you never know. Come on. Oh, okay, it's already open. Let's just cut through this label. I did a terrible job of cutting it. There we go. All right, let's see. I know there's some wires that are permanently attached. Yep, there are. Okay, that's. I was trying to take out the screw for the antenna, and has a little washer on the antenna wire. There we are. Okay, so there is the back cover. Unfortunately, it is soldered, so I'm just going to put the battery cover back on, just to hold my mess in there. Whoops. I just dropped one of the screws on the floor. Oh no, did I not? Oh, I didn't. It's in the battery compartment. I'm glad I put the door on. Ha. Alrighty, there we go. There's the 5-core on the inside. Okay. All right, well, right off the bat, I'm noticing the bar antenna. It's not broken, but it's very bent. Let me zoom in. What the heck is going on there? It's, like I said, it's not broken. Or is it? No, it's solid. That is wild. So junky. Okay, anyways. I need to take the PCB out of here so I can figure out what's what on the IC. Nothing's broken in the radio, so that's good. 2 screws and the third one here. Okay, that's a slotted screw, so I can... Oh, there's one more here. There we go. Whoops, and that screw fell out. I think this was Shango when he took his apart. I like that he talked about this. So this is the tuning dial here and has those little 2 prongs there and pokes into that. So it's not attached. It's very easy to service this thing. I really like that. All right, so it's now time to examine how this thing works. All right, poking around is complete. Let's take a look at what we have here on the paper. I've written down the values I found. So we have over here, this is the speaker capacitor, 220 on the Sony design, 470 on this radio. I think that's totally fine. Like I said, I think that's filtering bass. They have it hooked up to headphones, which probably have a better bass response than the speaker in here does. So I'm thinking that's fine. Then we have this cap right here, which is the VCC, or like the main bulk capacitance, 470 microfarad, 25 volts. So what that tells us is the radio having that bigger battery or that high voltage battery in here has no problem. The capacitor is 25 volts. Even if I had like 6 volts of power going into there or 8 volts, it would be totally fine. I mean, that's close to the upper limit of recommended for this. But clearly, having a fully charged lithium-ion battery in this radio, no problem whatsoever. Next up is the ripple filter right here, and it calls for 10 microfarad, 50 volts. That's exactly what is installed. And then we have the first AFC AGC cap. 4.7 is what they call for. 4.7 is what's in here. 63 volts, 50 volts from Sony. Not quite sure why these are so high. Maybe there's a lot of overshoot coming out of this chip or something. So anyways, it's fine there with 63. And the only difference I can find here is this AGC cap here. It calls for 10 microfarad and it is 1 microfarad. So I'm not quite sure what effect that's going to have, but I think all I can do is just swap it out with a 10, see if that makes things better. Incidentally, the meter connection here shows a 10 microfarad cap and it goes off to the LED. It's not connected to anything. Actually, there is a hole, so you could solder a wire in there if you want to add extra functionality of like a VU meter or an LED, tuning LED. You can totally replicate this. I'm sure what this cap probably does is help kind of the output out of this is probably jittery, like it would flicker a lot. So with the cap there, it probably makes it a much smoother, constant LED being on or off. It doesn't have a value for this resistor R7. R6 though is a 1K, and then the LED. So anyways, yeah, LED would be possible. I mean, it would take extra battery power though. So you do really want to do that? maybe not, right? All right, first thing I want to do is I'm going to pop out this original cap. The 1 microfarad one. Come on. There we go. Brand is, who knows? Because I don't. But yeah, 1 microfarad. I wonder if that was a mistake. Like they should have put a 10 in there. Now, unfortunately, all I have is a 10 at 25 volts. I couldn't find anything else. So I'm just going to have to hope for the best. Hope that this doesn't damage it in any way. This is the lazy way to do recaps. I'm not even going to remove the solder. I'm just going to heat that up and get these through the hole. I mean, what's the worst case that's going to happen? It's going to blow the cap. I can replace it. No big deal. You'd almost think that because, you know, this radio runs on battery voltage, it would never have any kind of high voltage, right? Like that you wouldn't have to worry about that. But it is possible, like, you know, these maybe RF related, I don't know. If anyone understands radios better than I do, please let me know in the comment section. All right, well, the cap is in, the new cap. And I'm not sure I didn't screw anything else up here. Oh, the speaker magnet keeps attracting the bar antenna. Let's get this back on here so I can tune the radio. Gotta get the thing in the correct position, right? I think that's it. All right, I can't get AM reception down here. I'm not gonna put this back together, so I'll leave the FM antenna off. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna take this upstairs. Well, I gotta put the battery back in first, right? I'll take this upstairs and I'll do a test. Well, I am back from being upstairs, and I had a little trouble finding any music on the AM band. The one music station from our Portland Public School District was actually playing sort of a talk show, or they were talking about student issues. That station is normally my go-to music station. They don't have commercials. It's pretty cool for that. But anyways, I found one of the powerful sports stations, which I am picking up down here. Let me turn it up.
Something we can hang our hats on.
Wait.
It's something we can be proud of.
Anyhow, this station was playing a little bumper that had actual music, and guess what? It fixed it. It sounds perfect now. I mean, it sounds like AM radio sounds, but no more distortion at all on the AM band. So that totally did the trick. Switching it from 10 microfarad to from the 1 microfarad that was on the radio to a 10, which is what's on the schematic from Sony. And now the AM sounds great. So there we go. One incorrect capacitor. I don't know if this is the same on all of these radios, or is it just a problem with this one? But nonetheless, I'm going to put this thing back together and it's fixed. That's so cool. And by the way, one other thing I was going to mention, I'll just turn this off and flip it over. People had said that I think there were some comments that I should have put the battery and the charger stuff over here. And absolutely, there's plenty of room in the case here. I could make the battery internal. And to be honest, the problem is that little board I have, this charger board, I'd need to 3D print something. I could mount it right around here, and there's like a knockout for the old AC mains input. I could 3D print something and hold that board there. And then you'd be able to plug the USB straight into the back of the battery, into the cover, without having to take the battery door off. But to be honest, the battery life on this radio, I mean, I've actually been using it since I made that first video, and it barely draws any current. So the battery is going to last a really long time. And then what I do, I just plug it in and take the battery cover off, charge it for a little while and plug it back in. I mean, that's nothing. And it's going to run for tons and tons of hours. But yeah, so anyways, I'm going to put this thing back together. But top tip, check your radio to see if that cap right there is wrong and swap it out with the right value from 1 and put the 10 microfarad in there and improve your AM performance, at least from that distortion and overload, greatly. Didn't seem to affect any reception, by the way. Upstairs, it was working fine. Down here, there's a lot of LED lights that caused interference, but up there, it was okay. I was getting all my normal stations, and they sounded great. So, if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my second channel. It really helped if you did. Check out my main channel if you haven't already seen that or aren't already a subscriber. I think most people watching probably already know about my main channel, but just in case, you can also support me on Patreon if you so desire. There is a link in the description, and I think that's it. So that's it. Yeah, that is it. Okay, cool. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.